Hi, I'm Paul Batista. I'm going to talk about how to make superhuman analysts. Analysts who look at the data and they see the full story. Imagine an instant responder who doesn't need to decide between being thorough or getting the job done. Imagine a threat hunter who knows the network 1,000 times better than the adversary. Every IP, every hostname they've ever looked at, they have memorized. Maybe it's a red teamer who has a sense for what ports are open before he even runs the port scan. Even better, a vulnerability management professional who has every CVE memorized, is in tune with the relevant dark web chatter, and can instantly translate 109 languages, all without ever leaving the website she was browsing. Can you memorize every hash and virus total, every IP in your threat intel platform? Would you like to see a new member of your SOC who on day one knows every CIDR range on your network? This superpower I'm referring to is data awareness. Contextual information in line in applications as users or analysts are doing their work. The way we deliver this is with augmented reality, but not with glasses, not with goggles, actually done in software at the screen level, recognizing the pixel values and actually overlaying that information. So here at Polarity, we focus on two key missions. One is around data awareness, very much inspired by my co-founder's time and my time in both intelligence and in incident response. It's this idea that you have two analysts both investigating the same thing. They don't know about one another and they have different pieces of the puzzle. If they don't communicate, that could be a big problem and lead to an intelligence failure. I know it's a cliched problem, but we set out to solve it nonetheless. And so the traditional way that's solved is you require two actions. If there's two analysts, you say, hey, you both must log into this investigation management system. And one analyst puts their notes in, second analyst searches on those notes. If they don't both log in the system, there's a failure. So the way we've solved that is essentially gotten that down from two actions or more, if there's more than two people, down to 1 or 0 actions. And we'll show that in a moment, what I mean by that. The second problem we solve is data recall. The human memory is limited, fairly obvious statement. For us, this was inspired by IP addresses on the internet. Despite there being more than 4 billion of them, we'd still get these moments we called IP deja vu. We'd look at an address and say, I swear I saw that before. Why does it look familiar? And then we lose time searching our notes, searching the internet, sometimes searching classified sources to try to find that context. And sometimes we'd impress ourselves. We'd say, wow, I remember an IP address from a year ago. The human brain's pretty amazing. More often than not, though, it was just a trick on numbers. The first octet was off. It might as well be a different continent. And we wasted a whole bunch of time interrupting our workflow. So the way we solve these two problems is we allow users to annotate data they want to remember or connect to an API, connect to a data set, whatever that data is they want to remember. And then we use computer vision to recognize what's on their screen in real time as they're doing their work and automatically overlay that data as it's related, essentially giving the team this collective memory for two key value propositions: better decisions because you have that data awareness, you have that contextual information, and faster decisions because you don't have to interrupt a workflow and go look something up. All right into a demo here. Our journey begins with incident handling. Let's say we've determined that a given host has been infected with a piece of malware, and we're tasked with looking at some of the network traffic. So we come to an analytic conclusion. We determined that this host here has connected to a known CNC server. So we can capture that note. Connected to known CNC. When I hit apply here, from this point on, I now have access to that note, not only in this application, but in any other tool I use. And so do my coworkers as well. It's shared access. So all I do have to do is hit a keystroke here, and I can see my notes as well as my coworker's notes. So I can see that this is Victoria's laptop based on a note from a coworker. I can also quickly see who else is looking at this given IP address here, or host name, doesn't really matter, and have that awareness right out of the gate. It did require that I hit a keystroke, and that's what I referred to as earlier as like taking one action, but we can actually do better than that. So I'm going to clear this out here. Switch modes in Polarity, and what you'll notice now is as the pixels on my screen change, it doesn't actually require me to hit a keystroke, it doesn't require any action. Those notes on both that IP address as well as other strings are pulled up automatically. So here's those notes. I didn't have to take any action. I just have that based on the pixels changing on the screen. And we can do one better than that as well. So we can actually highlight in line in the application. So you can see here, these colorful highlights here are drawn on the screen.
based on that content. So I mouse over them and I can get those notes, as well as some data from integration. So you can see here I'm pulling back max, mine, and virus total data. Now, one of the benefits of using computer vision is that it allows us to not only work in this application, in this case Splunk, but maybe I have the same data or similar data in another application, and you can see how we overlay right on top of that other application as well. Or maybe I'm looking at an actual PCAP data in the tool that's probably more appropriate, like Wireshark. You can see we're overlaying right on top of Wireshark. This is not with a plugin. It's not with some extension of Wireshark. We're actually recognizing those pixel values. So maybe I'm a command prompt user. I can pull back context on top of command prompt, or maybe I'm a PowerShell user or terminal. Maybe I'm Mac, maybe I'm Linux. It really doesn't matter.
You might be wondering what the colors mean. Well, those colors are configurable by a user or by an admin. And so in the example I gave, anything in gray was a server asset or informational data. Anything blue was a user asset. Anything that had an orange tint to it was an asset with a vulnerability. Anything in purple was a current investigation. Anything in pink was historical investigation or threat intel data.
So now with that context on colors, you can see how some of these patterns start to emerge. Like I said, the purple represents the current investigation, and the pink is the past historical investigation as well as threat data. I can see a server asset here, part of the VPN pool. I can see a user asset in blue and a couple systems with vulnerabilities here, highlighted in that orange tint. As I continue to scroll through data, these patterns emerge, right? So I can see, kind of get that context. This slight pink data here, or the slight pink coloring here, represents some threat intel data. So I can see that it's in Alien Vault, I can see that it's in Threat Stream, URL scan, virus total, and I can click and kind of scroll through and view some of that information. I can add tags right here in the system, feedback right back into the threat intel platform, a screenshot preview from URL scan, and some virus total data. So the reason we used computer vision was so that we can support any application and really run on top of anything. Even if the pixels on the screen are on a VM and you're detonating malware, we're going to run right on top of that VM. If you're RDP'd or SSH'd into a remote system, we're going to provide context right there. And that was the key reason why we built Polarity to operate this way and really leverage computer vision. There's a downside, of course, if what's on the screen is not readable. So you'll notice as I scroll out here, we're still reading it even with pretty small font, but at some point it becomes so small you can't read the text at all. And even in this case, we still want to provide context, and so you can do that just by hitting a keystroke. So you can still get access to all that context by hitting a keystroke and still have access to that information. Okay, our journey continues, and maybe now I'm the malware analyst trying to figure out what that piece of malware is actually doing. I might start my analysis by doing some static investigation here, taking a look at the source code. You'll notice that I can take notes as I go through things and figure stuff out. I might also want to include some reference data here, so I can see here cert utils being used, and potentially that's used for obfuscation reasons. More on the dynamic side now, running this piece of malware inside of any.run, really kind of a VM within a VM here. And you can see Polarity still overlaying that context on top of it here. So I have a file hash here I can see is in our threat intel platform. Still getting that context on the cert util. Also see that this domain name's in Alien Vault. And then really getting this context on some of these IP addresses here as well. So let's dive into one of these. So here I can see that this IP address is in Alien Vault. I can also see that it hit in our Splunk instance, which we'll go back to because that sounds pretty important. I can see that it's labeled C2 in our threat intel platform, as well as seeing a URL scan preview of the site and some virus total metrics as well. So to me, the most interesting thing here is really that, hey, this IP address is showing up in my specific logs, not this open source logs here in any.run. And I can start to take a look at some of those events here without ever leaving this website or this VM. But if I want to, let's say, I think it warrants continuing this investigation, I can pivot right here into Splunk. And now what you'll see is we have some highlights there. So I can see this is actually looks like a server information. We don't see any blue tint on it. So that kind of tells me right away that it's a server. But I can also kind of still get those highlights and that other information. It goes with me as I continue that investigation. Same notes as before, nothing new here. So if I come to the conclusion that, hey, this looks legit, this host, this IP is beaconing out or connecting out to this command and control, I probably should add it to this investigation. This will, give it that purple highlight so that myself and my coworkers now will be able to keep track of that if it shows up somewhere else. So let's talk about integrations. Here I have a log from a cruise ship, and based on this log, I can quickly bring back an interactive map so I can see that this cruise ship is in port in Key West right now. This was done by defining 3 things: what to recognize on the screen, in this case, a latitude and longitude; what actions to take, in this case, connect out to the Google Maps API and run a search; and then what information to overlay. In this case, we're overlaying an interactive map. A lot of things can be done with these. It doesn't always have to connect out to an API. For instance, here we have an epoch or epic time on the screen, and you can see we can quickly do a conversion of them. I also have the cruise ship name on my screen, and you can see based on this cruise ship name, we're quickly pulling back a little bit of Wikipedia as well as metrics on that cruise ship. Okay, this is where our journey comes to an end. Hopefully you got a sense from this short demo how Polarity can provide value, giving you that context in line by highlighting data that's relevant and important to you, giving you a sense of that story, not just one application, not just a web browser, but really across all workflows, all tools, and everyone on the team.
This ability to extend the platform has resulted in many use cases that never cease to amaze me. Thank you to all of our customers and integration partners who have chosen to build on top of the platform. It is unfortunate that during these difficult times we do not get to meet in person. Please stop by our virtual booth and join one of our use case sessions to see Polarity in action live. Thank you for everything you do to keep our data secure. We care about your team. We care about your mission.